Hello, everyone, and welcome to Redesign Your Life Today. I'm Daniel Kobryner, a mental fitness coach and a heart-centered and high-energy life coach, motivational speaker, and I'm a passionate believer that transformation is always possible, no matter your age or your story. This podcast is a space for you, especially over 40, who feel stuck, off track, or disconnected from who you truly are. If you've ever thought there's got to be more to life than this, you're in the right place. Here, we explore how to break through fear, procrastination, self-doubt, and reconnect with our purpose, our power, and our truth. You'll hear inspiring conversations with heart-centered guests who have experienced real transformation and who now live with intention, freedom, and alignment. It's not about surface level change. It's about radical transformation and reconnection with your authentic self. It's about designing a life that just doesn't look good from the outside, but feels right on the inside. And today I've got the pleasure to have an absolutely amazing guest, Alexandra Dotcheva. And I'm just a few words about Alexandra. Alexandra came to the US in 2000 and she received her doctorate in violin from the Louisiana State University in 2007. She joined the Syracuse Symphony Orchestra in 2006, and in 2008, prompted by the economic crisis, she decided to pursue a career in nursing. And for her academic and clinical performance, she was awarding the John Trezak Award in 2010 and the Stella Sroka Award for Excellence in Cardiac Nursing and the Esther McCarthy Memorial Scholarship in 2001 upon graduation. Alexandra has been practicing as a registered nurse since 2011. Her nursing experience includes ICU, orthopedic trauma, and home care. 2014, she began her investing career with a focus on rental estate and later on options trading. She's currently a full-time home care nurse and owner of 3 real estate businesses. Her passion for health, martial arts, fitness, and financial independence, as well as her experience with the challenges of cultural integration, inspired her to write the book. It's really simple, a holistic approach to self-confidence. This is a practical guide in which she shares her journey to success with the intention to inspire many others to embrace change and pursue their dreams in spite of fear and insecurity. So thank you so much, Alexandra, for being with us today. And we had the opportunity to have a first chat together, and I really like you to walk us through, your, the various transformations you experienced in your life.
Thank you so much for having me, Daniel. It's really a pleasure being here, and thank you for this awesome introduction. Very, very kind. Yes, where would you like me to start? Transformation was one thing I really didn't ever think was possible while I was a musician, and it turned out to be otherwise fortunate later in my life. And this is why I talk to people to help them get inspired and change their lives, even if they think this is impossible, which really isn't impossible at all.
Yeah, well, and I can see with you that everything's possible. So, Alexandra, my understanding, you come to the US, you are a violinist, and really you intend to pursue your career in that field.
Yes, that
So,
was it. I was born in a musician's family, and when you are young in Bulgaria, it's not much of a negotiation what profession you will have when your both parents are musicians.
Mhm.
And they wanted to instill the discipline, the orientation towards work ethic from a very young age. And of course, they wanted me to stay out of trouble in the streets. So practicing the violin multiple hours a day from young age that prevented certain problems that other children had my age when they were, out and about, when they were not doing their homeworks at school. And also, the other thing is that I haven't mentioned in my bio really that we lived for 3 years in Mexico before we went back to Bulgaria. So I was 6 years old when we returned to Bulgaria, and my parents made the mistake. It was communism during that time, but my mother felt nostalgic, so we went back to Bulgaria. So then I started the violin, and as soon as they realized their mistake, which was pretty much immediately, but they thought it was too hard to go back to Mexico for whatever reason. I still a mystery to me why, but they programmed me from a very young age to be a great musician, work hard, and eventually get out of Bulgaria. So that's where the whole purpose of music was, they believed, because it was a prestigious thing, right? It was giving me opportunities to choose where to live, where to work if I was really good and scored a great audition somewhere as a teacher, professor, or an orchestra musician.
Wow, this is very powerful. So the decision to go to the United States, did it come naturally when you were in Bulgaria?
Well, yes, I mean, I made a great teacher who was a Bulgarian Armenian who had been established in the United States, and he gave master classes in Bulgaria every year. So we met and I played for him. I auditioned and he decided that I could be his student. Of course, I expressed a very strong desire to be his student because he also had great reputation as a teacher.
Mhm.
So I was 24 at the time, and I had tried in Europe before that, but the problem was I had been struggling with stage fright for since teenage, and that prevented me from scoring some auditions in Europe that I really wanted to do.
Mhm.
And uh, the whole arrangement for the United States, I never expected that I would get to the US because my prime ambition was really Europe. I didn't even imagine that America was possible, but it turned out it was possible with some, arrangements. You complete some conditions, you pass a pretty hard English test. That was totally a condition from the university. You couldn't just come to America without knowing a word of English and expect to get a scholarship. So it was quite a bit of work to get from the intention to become a student to actually land here as a student in August 2000.
In August 2000. Wow. Okay. And in which city was it that you
It was Baton Rouge, Louisiana, the Louisiana State University.
in Baton Rouge? Okay. And how was your experience then as a musician? You arrived there, you don't know anybody, or perhaps, of course, with this support, this professor. So how did you adjust to life then in Louisiana? Was it easy?
Well, no, it's not easy, of course, but I was expecting to work. I was expecting to support myself to the best of my ability and what was allowed within the parameters of music because uh, student visa, that's a very limited ability to, you're not allowed to really work. But if it was within your specialty, the university would allow you to audition for orchestras. You could work in the library if you wanted to. You could teach. It was a adjacent academy for young children and adults also who wanted to pursue violin as a hobby or maybe professionally. But these were the opportunities to work, and I seized every possible opportunity to work and support myself because the scholarship was great, but I didn't want to completely rely on it
Mhm.
or display the sense of entitlement that some people have. My entitlement was in a different way that I learned later that, again, it was wrong. But the adjustment was not easy, but there were lots of Bulgarians there established at LSU already, musicians, and many of them helped me quite a bit the first several years until I got on my feet. And then we helped each other the best we could for the adjustment period. And then everybody to become as independent as possible because we were facing a pretty rigid market, very competitive market as musicians. And we began auditioning right from the start. And that was one of the biggest challenges for me because, like I said, I did have this stage fright that I developed in teenage. And
Mhm.
most of it was very self-inflicted, like 90%. But unfortunately, I wasn't able changed my mindset in a way to embrace challenges as motivation. They allowed them to crush me. So that was my biggest challenge in Bulgaria. And then when I came to the States, where we had to audition for gigs, for work opportunities, and for performance opportunities.
Okay. And when you said, okay, this, so does it mean that until, because afterwards you had a dramatic change in terms of career? Yes. If
Mhm.
when
That
you
was way
became a
later,
nurse.
yes.
And would you say that until that the end, you could not overcome this fright stage
The stage fright,
or
it
stage
got a
fright?
little bit
Sorry.
better. That's fine. I did overcome some of it, but by the time I was 32, I already had a long, almost 20-year work history of lack of confidence as a performer.
I
And that
see.
affected my thinking throughout my life aspect, every aspect of my life that was affected personally, professionally, mentally, emotionally, because when you dedicate nearly 30 years of your life, okay, let's say at the time it was 25 years, which is at age 31, that's a long time, 25 years. That's where after people practice a trade for 25 years, they start thinking of retirement. With our career, it's you basically are auditioning at that time after you have already been a musician for 20, 22 years. You start auditioning for orchestras. And in America, the auditions are behind a curtain. In Europe, in some places too, but you pay for everything, your hotel, your rental car, your airplane ticket. You play behind the curtain for 10 minutes. You have to perform your absolute best from the excerpts from the committee decides that you have to play for these 10 minutes and then thank you for coming, goodbye, and off you go. So the confidence level that you need to perform at your absolute best in a matter of 10 minutes behind the curtain, it was something that I learned had to be a really high there. And especially when you listen to your competition in the next room, because the walls where you warm up are not thick enough for you not to listen to your competition. And you realize, oh my gosh, this person is better in this way, the other person is better in that way. That's the psychosis of every orchestra musician who is auditioning. But the learning curve was extremely steep. And like I said, by the time I was already 32, the economic crisis hit. That was 2008. And
Mhm.
I had a part-time position in the Syracuse Symphony, and I was still auditioning for full-time. I could never fully make myself perform 100% on stage the way I was able to in the practice room. And that's when it hit me that the fright could only be overcome by completely changing my life at that point, which already seemed very late at 32 because you feel old when you have not accomplished at 30. And I mean, lots of people get hit by reality after they pass 30. And some of us experience this early midlife crisis that most people experience in their 40s, but mine came at 32 because I had been a musician for 26 years at that
Wow.
time.
Uh-huh. 20, yeah. So 30, you are there. So was there a point where you really think, okay, I don't want to do it more. I really want to do something different. Was it like, do you remember a moment where it was like, okay, I have enough of that? Or was it like this? And
Well, it was a realistic kick in the butt because orchestras started bankrupting in the United States between 2006 and 2008. And our orchestra, the Syracuse Symphony Orchestra, there was a writing on the wall ever since I started there in 2006. Like when I moved to Syracuse from Baton Rouge, the first thing, my introductory meeting with the colleagues that I was so excited to meet after the audition was it was actually a meeting between the Musicians Union and the orchestra to decide whether to go on strike because the musicians were not happy with their salary increase. And that's not a good way to start a new job in an
no, for
orchestra
sure.
when they're gathering to decide whether to strike or not. So, to go on a strike or not. So, that was in 2006. And then orchestra after orchestra after orchestra, bankruptcies in the United States. And I had to face this reality because the more orchestras collapsed, the more hungry, talented musicians that were out there auditioning. And when you audition with a competition of 40 to 500 people for one spot in an orchestra, you must have a realistic understanding of your abilities uh, compared to, as related to your stage insecurities and frights and all that, and accumulated psychological history over the years.
Mhm.
And I then figured I'm not going to fight this anymore. I'm going to start something brand new. I'll go into a career where nobody knows me and I don't know anybody. So I won't rely on any connections. I will build my career from scratch and with my own efforts. And that was it. That was the decision.
Wow. This is very powerful. So you're there, you're 31, and then how did nursing come into the equation? Was it something you had considered before? You felt attracted to? Was it about helping people?
Well, I liked science as a child, but because I was in a specialized music school from the first through the 12th grade, I got exposed to almost no science whatsoever. But biology was always fascinating to me.
Mhm.
And I did want, yes, at 32, I wanted to, for a change, feel useful to society because I didn't feel useful to society as a musician. And that's when I also had to calculate because I had been in college 11 years by the time I was 32, 4 years bachelor's degree, 2 years master's degree, and 5 years a doctoral degree with 1 year in between the bachelor's and America. 1 year I took a break then because I had a nervous breakdown at 23 years old on a stage event. So all these things considered, I was thinking, what is a profession that is really, really wanted
Mhm.
all over the world, and it
Mhm.
won't take another 11 years to master. So nursing was the obvious answer. It was a huge shortage of nurses in the United States. And the profession was such that it has so many branches that you can really choose several fields throughout your career and stay in one field for 4 or 5 years, then go to a different field and so on until you find something that really matches you. And I thought that's a great opportunity. And how was I going to do it? I was used to practicing 9, 10 hours a day, 11 hours a day, the violin. And I said, okay, so now I'm going to replace the violin practice with reading the textbooks because I had no science base, let alone in English. So I started the anatomy and physiology textbook, which was 1,200 pages, big textbook. I read it 4 times before I even started the anatomy and physiology class. I did the exact same book with my chemistry text, exact same thing with my chemistry textbook, with my microbiology textbook, psychology, sociology. All these books were read at least twice from cover to cover before I even started the classes once I enrolled in these classes. So the planning was really uh, very tight and disciplined, but I did have days where I studied until 3 a.m. and I had to get up at 7 a.m. or 6 a.m. to go be a nursing assistant once I already entered nursing school. So it was not natural and not natural because I was very interested in helping other people and put my ego behind me and prioritize on people's needs. I was fascinated by the science, absolutely, because the second I started learning the math, which I hadn't had math since seventh grade, my brain awakened in a very different way. And I was like, wow, I'm alive again. Something new is going on. And I felt like my head was about to explode, but I was learning. And that was amazing that I could learn so much in my 30s because they say, oh, once you hit 35, your learning ability decreases. So now I'm trying to cram as much from 32 to 35. Then, of course, when I turned 35, I discovered that it's a complete BS that you cannot learn after 35. You can learn even more because now you have the confidence of a learner, a lifelong learner. And uh, gradually, I made my way into the nursing, but it was a huge adjustment, communication-wise, discipline-wise, and really priority-wise and time management-wise.
Wow. So you see, it's fascinating because when I listen to you, what you mentioned that even before starting the courses, you read every book in every subject two, at least twice, not 3 times. I mean, I guess you've done things that nobody else does. I mean,
Oh,
uh,
but I had to, Daniel, because there were 18-year-olds who had excellent science base. And
yeah, yeah,
I was
yeah.
32-year-old. I was basically almost their mother in their eyes, right? And I cannot go there completely ignorant. Now, I aced all the classes, mind you. Every single class I aced. And of course, that was nice. But the preparation for that also, counts because uh,
Well,
it wouldn't have happened without me preparing.
it's exactly that. When you say you aced, I mean, with all what you've done, this is so remarkable. And I guess that, obviously all the discipline, you had all your life for violin. You said practicing 10 hours a day. this
Yeah.
was a huge, as you say, at least mental support when you started your new path.
It was an advantage. It was an advantage for sure. But I was way busier during nursing school because I was also a musician at the time, playing the orchestra, teaching people, and I was also tutoring at the community college once I finished
Ah,
some of the
at the same
classes
time. Right.
and
So you were
studying
teaching.
and the martial arts. So everything was very intense time that I never believed was possible. And I wanted to make myself believe it was possible because by the time I started nursing school, my confidence was really crushed. And I had to convince myself I can do much better. And the only way to do it, I thought, was to just really, like a steamroller, just get through all these tasks and nail them and think of nothing else and very single-mindedly just focus on every single one of them and just do it. And it worked. It worked.
I mean, this is amazing. And so how long did the studies, last to become a certified nurse? How many years is it? Is it several
Oh,
years?
so depending what degree you're pursuing, the associates is usually 2 years. I took it in 3 years because I took the prerequisite science classes that I had missed in high school. Okay.
Mhm.
I took those classes in the first year. Then I overlapped with some classes. And when I started nursing school, I was very fortunate to find a weekend program, which was for people who were already working, who had families, but wanted to change careers. So there was this amazing weekend program that we met for 12 hours a day, 3 days, a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, every other weekend. And so that's where the classes in clinical were. And then in between that, they would give you about 200 pages to read in between every 2 week class stretch. And you had to read these textbooks and the homeworks, which most people, of course, never read in my class. And I read them, every single one of them, because I wanted to know. I wanted to be a knowledgeable and very confident nurse because, like I said, I had no connections in the field. So I had to work my way through from bottom, completely zero. I knew no doctors, I knew no nurses because I'm also a very healthy person. So I've never befriended doctors or nurses. And um, it was a very intense program, but great in terms of the consideration for people who already worked or those who had families and worked.
Yeah, when I listen to you, I can feel the passion you had to do that because, I mean, the drive and determination to do all this, I mean, to work every other weekend and to spend so many hours. Okay, you've done it. And you mentioned something as well. You said at the same time, or was it at the same time that you started practicing the martial arts?
I started martial arts at 30, so that was in 2006. That was a dream of mine since the third grade, mind you. And I have described this in my book, actually, chapter one, because that's one of the aspects when you get your confidence crushed at a young age, when you have a dream and parents say, absolutely not, don't even mention it, because, I was fascinated by the Chinese martial arts movies when I was a kid, because that was still socialism, communism. So they were playing really lots of Russian movies, Soviet movies, lots of East German movies, lots of the socialist bloc movies. But there was the Chinese movies, and of course there was also many Italian and French movies that were very popular, but very limited movie choices in
Mhm.
during that era. And for whatever reason, they played lots of Chinese martial arts movies. And as a child, I was fascinated and I was secretly practicing in our shared bedroom when my parents were in the kitchen because I was living in one bedroom with my parents when I was very young, very small place. And at some point, I shared with my dad, hey, I've been practicing karate. And why was I practicing karate? Not only because I love Chinese music, because I wanted to beat up the bullies at my school, the boys at my school. I wanted to beat them up, and my father like exploded. How, you're a violinist? You're gonna break your fingers. You're gonna hurt yourself. What are you thinking? Absolutely not. Don't even mention martial arts again. So that was a big deal at the time because I really, really wanted to be an excellent martial artist.
Mhm.
And I regretted sharing this with my father. I really regretted that. And ever since then, that really determined the relationship between me and them because the most cherished things I wanted and shared with them, there were always thousands of reasons why I couldn't pursue them. And the same was exactly the case, Daniel, when I was 30 and I told them I'm starting karate. They were across the ocean, so they couldn't do much. And they were like, you're absolutely crazy. You're too old. I said, no, no, I'm not too old. People do things. And then I went on to pursue a black belt. in Okinawan karate. I earned my black belt and then I earned a blue belt in Aikido. So lo and behold, martial arts worked. And that was another aspect of discipline during nursing school and then during real estate and everything else, because what they teach you in martial arts is really remarkably valuable in the real dojo, which is called life. So, they teach you perseverance, they teach you self-respect, they teach you respect for others. Okay, and most importantly, emotional and physical self-control. Invaluable skill, because I had no emotional control for many, many years due to my fears and insecurities. And so martial arts for 12 years doing that was one of the most beneficial decisions I had ever made. And I recommend everybody to do martial arts for at least 5 years of their life, if not way longer than that, if possible.
Wow. And for instance, actually, when you started doing martial arts, did you see a difference, for instance, in your violin playing, or did you, or at that time it was already after, because obviously you talk about, how do you say, controlling your emotions and things like that. Did you see changes now? And do you think if you had started earlier, it would have been, things might have been different in your career?
Yes, because I saw very, very confident teenagers, not arrogant teenagers, but legitimately confident teenagers doing martial arts and excelling at school. It didn't help me with the violin because 2006, when I started martial arts, first of all, the goal was the technique, the goal was the art, the fight.
Mhm.
It took a couple of years to realize that really was not the goal because anybody can learn technique, but the mindset was the goal. And by then it was already 2008, 2009. So my mindset had way far gone with the violin confidence. It was really doomed to, it really wasn't working. I knew that because too much accumulated bad history. And then I started looking for these other possibilities that my brain could do, such as nursing. And I also realized I would regret deeply in 30 years if I didn't switch careers at the time when I thought it was appropriate to switch careers, because I had been contemplating it for like maybe 4 or 5 years, but I was always afraid to even mention it, let alone pursue it. But when I started in nursing, that's when I could apply the martial arts skills because with my emotional condition at the time, it took 5 or 6 years to really get my emotions under control. And then a couple more years to really feel confident about it. So it's not a magic transformation, especially when you're a dense person like I was, that wasn't even aware that I needed this emotional transformation in the first place. Because once you become aware, that's the battle half won. But I was way, way before that stage when I started learning martial arts. I wanted it for physical confidence and for fitness.
Mhm.
And because I wanted to fulfill my dream from childhood, which was, remember, the purpose was to beat up the bullies. It was not to transform myself or to learn self-control. But as a child, you don't realize these
Exactly. Yeah.
needs. Okay.
Yeah.
So that maturity comes later with the martial arts and with the great teachers I had because I was learning with a family that was both the national champions, both the husband and the wife. Amazing. The Tierneys, Greg and Tierney and Judy Mudafri Tierney, they're phenomenal martial artists. And they instilled the mindset of the black belt mentality and all these details that I mentioned, self-respect, self-control, perseverance, and respect for others. It was practiced throughout. And with nursing, it worked because nursing was a brand new field for me and I could build. I had no bad history. All I needed to do was to remind myself that all the bad thoughts and stupid insecurities and anxieties from the violin had to be put behind, just like the violin was put behind once I entered the workforce as a nurse in 2011. And then it all came together. The pieces came together.
Wow. And this is really fascinating. And so this career in nursing, are you still pursuing it now, Alexandra, or have you finished it? Are you, uh,
I am still a home care nurse. I love the opportunity to work one-on-one with patients and really educate them about health. It's much better place to be than a hospital for me. I can stop working at any time because I have built enough tangible assets to real estate that I can really quit the job no matter what. Because the real estate pays better than the job at this point, and I own most of my assets free of debt. So that the work is really not a mandatory thing anymore. I
And
like the informative part of healthcare. I want to see what's going to happen now with the movement to improve the food supply, to improve the actual healthcare, and decrease the greed for money, hopefully, that the current administration is trying hard to do. RFK Jr., obviously, Bobby Kennedy Jr., but I also learn a lot from the patients, Daniel, because the patients tell me things that have helped me really understand the actual emotional need of people beyond the physical need manifestation of disease. And I know that 95% of the chronic diseases are completely reversible. And I strive to help these people with my personal example about impeccable health. And whoever listens, that's great. If they choose not to listen, that's fine too. We respect their choices. But it's interesting with the health profession because you encounter corruption left and right. I awakened to the fact of the actual goal of the American healthcare system about a year after I became a nurse. Now, of course, the fact that I am with a man who has been a nurse now for 32 years and 25 years in the emergency room, he taught me so much about nursing, my boyfriend, because he had experience 13 years before me when I started pursuing nursing. And he explained things to me, said, listen, nursing is not a fancy profession. You will encounter a lot of lies, corruption, greed, and things in healthcare that make absolutely no sense. And that was exactly the case. For one thing, most of my colleagues lived lifestyles exactly the opposite of what is recommended by the literature as far as healthy living. They were practicing health habits, again, exactly the opposite of what they knew they should. But somehow they thought that because they were healthcare professionals, they knew so much they could actually get away with practicing poor health habits. But then they were educating patients how to live healthy. And you see nurses and doctors carrying every disease known to man. And then you see how the healthcare system treats the doctors, the nurses, and what food they serve to their patients and the visitors, which is food that should never be given only to people to you hate, that you want them to die sooner. That's the type of food that they serve in the hospitals to sick people. And um, huge hypocrisy and double standard. And so I saw this a year or two after I was in the career. You gotta see it. Otherwise, you're either deaf or blind deliberately or naturally. I don't know. But there are indeed a lot of deaf and blind people in the profession, surprising amount. And that was another huge cultural shock. So you make a decision right away what you want to be in this profession. I want to have integrity. I don't want to have integrity. So I stay in nursing to really continue showing integrity to my patients and my colleagues. And I don't know how much longer I'll be here because the system is frustrating. I'm not gonna lie at all. The bureaucracy is frustrating. The nonsense is frustrating. And finding doctors who are on the same page as you is also hard, and that is frustrating in itself. But it's a challenge. It's a challenge to, look around, research, and see who aligns with a healthy way mindset. Many doctors have been silenced. They're afraid to lose their jobs if they tell the truth, and all these aspects. Okay, so you navigate your way, which is again good in home care because you're one-on-one with the patient, and the patient wants to have a serious and honest conversation. You can do that. In a hospital setting, it's harder because you're servicing 5 to 10 patients at a time, and it just doesn't work that way.
yeah, man. See, when I listen to you, and obviously I know that you've got I said, a passion as well. I said for self-care as well. I mean, self-care in terms of food, in terms of, diet, in terms of what you do. And obviously the system you mentioned there, I can understand that. I think the system is very often influenced by big pharma or or really just people wanting to sell the different kinds of
Mhm,
medicine, the drugs, but instead of and i- instead of teaching people how to live, how to have a good health, how to eat properly, I mean, and the health, I'm talking about, it's physical, mental, emotional, etc. There's so much which could be taught, but here,
mhm.
I think medicine is there really just to heal, the conditions, but not to go into the roots. And what we need to go is really to educate people in you know, in having this better uh, health habits.
That's right. I mean, the whole point is they're maintaining disease. It's called disease management and disease maintenance. Nobody
Yeah.
talks about healing anymore. And I can be completely honest with you. I'm yet to meet a doctor who eats as healthy as I do. Okay, with all of their knowledge and everything. And it's common knowledge now that it's the pharmaceutical companies that determine the curricula of the doctors, the medical students, what they study. And nutrition is really not at all a priority. They maybe learn an hour or 2 hours of nutrition in their entire study, expensive 4 year, 5 year degree. And it's astounding because I had to learn a semester of nutrition. It was the hardest class I ever learned. It was harder than pharmacology, it was harder than anatomy and physiology, it was harder than pathophysiology, it was harder than everything I learned, harder than chemistry or microbiology, Daniel, nutrition. It was so
Really?
complex. And at the time, I even didn't agree with the so-called American food pyramid because it was a whole load of crap. The foods they were recommending for people to eat that were loaded with hormones, drugs, and pesticides and all that stuff. And it's still, because I was at the time half vegetarian, and then later on became a whole food organic vegan, completely plant-based. But that's also part of the learning experience when you see how the system, works around. And now I know how the animal industry companies pay the healthcare system to advertise their very unhealthy products on their websites as healthy menus. So I already know how the system works because I've done enough research, I've watched enough documentaries. But at the time, I was very new and very naive, and I just wanted to absorb as much knowledge as possible. Um, you have to connect the dots because people confuse education with intelligence and they're not the same. And you see all these highly educated people with tons of certifications, and like I call it in my book, the alphabet soup behind their last names on their badges, the alphabet soup, all these certifications. And they don't know anything about healthy nutrition. Most of them don't exercise at all. And it's fascinating to see these highly well paid professionals with very superficial knowledge, and they really are not helping the patients. I mean, that's the main point. The patients stay sick for decades, and it's like, how does that work? It's just fascinating. Corruption.
Uh, no, absolutely. So actually, when we are about in this topic, you know, I mean, for the listeners, if you could perhaps just give a few tips, you know, on how to adopt, you know, like a healthy diet and some, you know, exercise. I know we could talk hours for that, but a few,
Yes,
you know, a
yes.
few tips if it's all right, so that people can as well, you know, if people want to remove like toxins from their body, what can they do? Something easy. I mean, to
Yeah.
start with, what would be the first steps?
So you start simple and you keep it simple. What's not simple is the discipline, the integrity, and the avoidance of temptations. For example, we don't touch restaurant food in our household. We don't touch restaurant food. It's not, and if family members come every 2 years and they insist to eating outside, we make it abundantly clear that it's not a treat, it's a compromise for us. Because
So no
restaurant
restaurant
food
food.
is not
Okay.
healthy food, okay?
Okay.
So we buy and we grow our own organic garden too, but
Okay.
all the ingredients are organic. We do plant-based because we don't want the hormones, the antibiotics, antivirals, antifungals, and all these and that the animal industry is giving to the animals that they get transferred to the derivative products like eggs, milk, yogurt, butter. Okay. Also, animal cruelty is a big deal to us right now, although I have to say we became vegan for selfish reasons. We did it for our health, okay? And then we, of course, said, well, yeah, we have no problem with the ethics towards animals because if the things that they're doing to the cows, sheep, and pigs are illegal to do to your dogs and cats, they should be legal to do to the other animals. But somehow people don't think that way, okay? They all proclaim, oh, animal cruelty, our doggies, our kitties, they're being strangled, they're being... Well, what about pigs, cows, and sheep, right? Chickens, fish, same thing, animals, sentient beings. But our purpose was health because my boyfriend was he had high blood pressure and high cholesterol for a very, very long time. And then he became pre-diabetic and he finally freaked out about his health. So we went plant-based, and 4 months later, he was no longer pre-diabetic. His blood pressure was normal for the first time in 15 years, and the cholesterol became very close to normal for the first time in 15 years. So we
Wow.
continued on the plant-based diet. And then later on, we of course got familiar with more research. We did learn about the Norwegian study in the 1950s, 1951 to be more precise, the study that was done about when Hitler took all the livestock from Norway during World War II to feed his war machine. So the Norwegians, their death related to heart disease lowered by a significant percentage when they couldn't eat the livestock. And then when they got their livestock back after the hostilities ended, the heart disease related death went right back up to where it was before they got their
Mhm.
deprived of their livestock. So, and that was much more organically grown livestock. It was not loaded with pesticides, none of these, commercial drugs that you end up eating with every slice of meat between 4 and 8 drugs a portion. Okay. So
Mhm.
that meat then was much cleaner and it was still not healthy for humans. The heart disease, right? So, but we never learn. That's just the problem. People forget, people don't learn, people are not interested. They just go for the taste. And that's why we went plant-based. So I cannot tell people what to do. I can just tell them what I do and why I do it.
Mhm.
And plus, I have to, be an example to my patients because anytime I recommend a plant-based diet, guess what the first question is? Are you vegan? And I tell them, yeah, I am vegan. I would never tell you to do something that I'm not doing myself. That wouldn't be fair, right?
Exactly.
I wouldn't
Uh-huh.
have any credibility with you. And then the patient's like, oh, okay, well, thank you. How nice. I consider that. It's just that simple. You establish the trust with people by leading by example. Then fitness and exercise, I love to do a lot of compound exercises. I do between 80 and 100 pull-ups with my own weight. Per gym session, I can do 100 dips. I'm 49 years old. I run 5 miles very fast and I bike at full resistance. I love high resistance cardio and I do this with the stationary bicycle, about 10 to 12 miles a day at the
Wow.
highest resistance, highest incline. Okay,
Uh-huh.
that's the cardio is always the end of my workout after I do my weights, my compounds, and all that other crazy stuff. But it's fantastic. So, and that's the other thing when they say, oh, the vegan diet, you're not well nourished. And then they see my fitness routine and I tell them, can you tell me once again how malnourished I am? Because I don't see you do 100 pull-ups in a gym session. And then they don't say anything else. Then nobody's laughing anymore, right? So it's a highly energizing diet if you do organic, of course. You don't want the GMOs, the genetically modified organisms, because that's cancer right there. But once you learn the discipline, and we prepare very simple meals, we eat a meal 2, 3 days, nothing fancy, but highly nutritious because we know what the nutritious plant-based foods are, and we use them in various combinations. We're busy people, we don't kitchen, and it's not more expensive than the other diet that people are eating. It's really not more expensive at all. Actually, it's more economical for the household. And people don't believe that because they associate the plant-based diet with going to some fancy health food store and buying that fancy stuff. And we don't buy processed vegan prepared meals. We
No,
only
exactly.
buy fruits, vegetables, grains, legumes, and we make our meals ourselves. And we never touch any fancy, expensive food stores. No need for that.
No, this is amazing. And actually, just out of curiosity, can you give us some examples of, for instance, which for instance, people say, okay, proteins are needed, but obviously they
Proteins,
are
of course.
plant-based proteins. So which
Mhm.
are perhaps, I mean, in the vegetable, in what, obviously even organic, what's the most available? What gives the
So all of
best
your
kind of nutrition?
legumes, you take all of your legumes, they're high in protein, peas, beans, lentils, and when you cook these things, they're first of all, they're the cheapest food you can find, and even in the organic section
Okay.
compared to other foods. And when you cook this thing, a pound of this will expand 2, 3 fold, and you can feed 2 people for 3 days with this
Hmm.
food. It's really, really inexpensive. And if you think about all the animals that people are eating, they're plant-based animals. How do they get their protein? Through plants, of course. Okay, so broccoli is high in protein, quinoa is high in protein. You have brown rice. Brussels sprouts, and then there are all these tons of fruits and vegetables that have natural chemicals that kill cancer cells if you eat them raw, okay, and adulterated, and we cook without any oils because thermally processed oil also changes its DNA and becomes carcinogenic. So all these considerations you learn gradually, and then you stick to them and keep it very, very simple and very basic. But truthfully, um, foods high in protein. Every plant, the plants are the only natural producers of protein, Daniel, okay? Because the
Okay.
animals are carriers. You don't need animals mediators to
Oh,
get your protein. You eat corpses, okay? It doesn't make sense. But all the legumes and also oats, I love oatmeal a lot. And they say, oh, oats increase your blood sugar. No, my hemoglobin A1C is at 5%. Anything under 5.6%, you have no diabetes at all. 5.6% to 6.4, that is pre-diabetes.
mhm.
Okay. So I'm at 5%, sometimes at 4.8%. So the oats, no, they don't increase my blood sugar, sorry. But that's not how it works. And I have listed in chapter 4 of my book tons of plants that are rich in protein. Then I've listed plants that have anti-carcinogenic properties. I've listed plants that have cholesterol-lowering properties. It's the whole chapter 4 is dedicated on food. And then chapter 5 is all recipes from our household because they're extremely simple recipes. And I just want to prove to people, look, it's not hard. It's really, really simple. That's why the title of the book is called It Really Is Simple, a holistic approach to self-confidence. We keep everything very easy and accessible because we are all about practicality in our household. And yes, detox, you mentioned detox also. I do detox every day. I know several detox formulations. You just need to find the one that works best for you, whether you do it orally or rectally, doesn't matter, so long as it works and it's affordable to you and you're consistent. You will be in excellent physical shape.
This is yeah. Oh, this is amazing. And when you say, for instance, fruit, because I mean, I'm quite familiar. I try to eat healthily as well, I have to say. And in the morning,
Wonderful.
I have fruit and I have porridge, which is oats, in the
Okay.
UK, and it's like, and I think I eat, the vegetable you mentioned. I would add sometimes chickpeas as well,
Chickpeas, of course. Oh, absolutely. We eat a
you
lot
know,
of chickpeas in our house. Yes,
and in
absolutely.
terms of the fruit, if you can just mention which are the most, you know, perhaps you would recommend,
So you want seasonal fruits per your area? Like I live in Arizona, for example, so I stuff myself every morning with a fruit salad that includes pineapple, papaya, banana, and mango. But
okay,
if I eat my oatmeal, I would put a lot of organic blueberries in it. All right.
okay, okay.
Watermelon is a big deal because of kidney health, and it has excellent natural chemicals that are anti-carcinogenic. Or fruit, you mentioned fruit, yeah. So kiwis,
Kiwis.
anything that is, I love nectarines, any fruit that is organic and well grown, and it's beautiful. Vary your fruits because you don't want to get bored. But if I like something, I can eat it forever. I'm just that type of person that I don't necessitate variety every day. I'm happy with if I find something. And I really maintain my idea about food is it not necessarily have to be for fun or pleasure. It's really for fuel. I want the energy, I want the fuel. And taste is never an argument. You can develop taste, you can grow taste to something. But it's never been the obstacle for me. Oh, this something's not tasty, so I'm not gonna eat it. Because I know that the healthiest food are the sourest, the spiciest, and the bitterest foods. Take
Mhm.
dandelion leaves, for example. They're bitter as hell, right? But if you eat in a salad, you have a lot of detox in your meal, in your portion. Then you have garlic and onions. I consume tremendous amounts of raw garlic and onion every day. Not the tastiest, but one of the healthiest. And then you have sour stuff like lemons. Okay, this is the healthy stuff. If that's what kills parasites, that's what kills viruses and bacteria, makes your body a very unfriendly environment for damageable pathogens. Now, of course, 10% of our body weight is bacteria, but that's
Mhm.
the good bacteria that we want to preserve and not allow the bad pathogens to proliferate our bodies and make us sick.
And I have to say, I'm very pleased when I listen to you because actually, you see, I'm French as well. garlic, onions, lemons. I mean, it's part of my kind
Excellent.
of daily diet. Not that I'm a great cook, but all this resonates a lot with me.
Well, you
And
don't have to cook it. That's just it. You don't have to cook it at
no, no,
all.
actually, I don't cook it. Actually, I just said a salad and just cut my onions
Exactly.
and
Exactly.
shallots as well, these kind of things. And so, actually, you see, you mentioned about the book. So, chapter 4, it's about the different, food. Chapter
Hmm.
5, it's recipes. Can you
Recipes.
speak a little bit about the other chapters, Alexandra, of your book?
Okay, so it's called the holistic approach to self-confidence, right? So I am really elaborating on the five main aspects of life.
Hmm.
Health, obviously, I'm very biased as a nurse and a health freak. So health has five chapters dedicated to it. Okay.
Okay.
Um, the so no, actually, the first chapter talks about health, but the chapters 3 through 5 is really all about nutrition, health, and approach to health. And chapter 6 is dedicated to exercise. Okay, I discussed the benefits of martial arts and the components I took from my martial arts practice that I integrate in my fitness practice every day now, the mental components, because physically everybody can go through the motions, and but if you're tired from work, when you're distracted by some life problems, you can easily either skip your fitness or do it in a poor manner. So chapter 6 discusses the mindset to get the absolute most out of your fitness routine, whatever that might be. But the components of the mindset are very emphasized in chapter 6. Like I said, chapter 5 was the recipes. Chapter 4 discusses different food types and it describes certain health aspects of my family as to how I arrived at where I am right now and why it works so well in our case with the vegan diet. Chapter 3 is dedicated to the health profession in the United States to let people know how things work and why they shouldn't be listening to everything that the government and the healthcare system tells them, to inform themselves and make really good decisions, sound decisions for themselves, and not depend on others to make these decisions for them. Because if you do that, you become an asset to these institutions and a lifelong asset at that. And that's really the absolute last thing you want for your quality of life. Okay. Chapter 2 has mindset techniques as to how to embrace challenges and changes in your life. If you're
Hmm.
really afraid of change, like I was for a very long time, and if you have no confidence that you can change with a quality added to your life. Okay. Chapter 7 is all about detox. All about detox. 8 is about spirituality. So I do the same type of approach to my mind as I do to my body. So nutrition, exercise, and detox, right? So the detox for the mind is, in my case, meditation. I have several types of meditation that I practice every day, depending on how the day goes, but that is the clearance for my mind so that then it can accept inspiration, which is the mind nutrition. All
Hmm.
right. And then we
Absolutely.
have the aspect of lifelong learning, which is the mind fitness. Lifelong learning of things that seem difficult to learn, like say you change your profession from arts to science, and then you decide to, in my case, I pursued building real estate businesses. I had no clue about finances, but I decided that if I were able to change from arts to science and become a successful nurse, I was absolutely going to become a successful real estate investor. And I applied just as much diligence then into 2014 through 2015. And I established one business after the other until I built three businesses, and they're fantastic. But it comes with a responsibility, and that is the fitness for the mind, lifelong learning of things that seem hard to learn, different jargon, different fields of life that seem incomprehensible, but if they can serve your life in the long term, absolutely go after their sink into that and learn it. Learn everything you can, because that's how you stay alive and relevant. And especially in these fast changing times with AI and technology, it's very hard to become old and obsolete, not necessarily physically, but really mentally, because people tend to give up and get afraid of these fast changes. But the more you embrace them for the benefit of your life and quality of life, the more relevant and you'll stay for a longer time. So that's where chapters 8 and 13 come into place with the lifelong learning and mind control, meditation, clearance, and nutrition. There is a chapter on career choices and career choices in terms of long-term planning for your financial well-being, because people confuse career with finances. It's very hard to become rich on a job, but it's very important to choose a job where you'll feel really useful, relevant, and needed for a long time, and a job that provides you with the opportunity to learn marketable skills throughout so you can stay relevant. Okay. And then the financial aspect, which are the next two chapters about investing and how to get rid of credit card debt step by step. Okay. Because I don't know how it is in the UK, Daniel, but in the United States, people are like drowning in credit card debt. It's a typical crisis that has been going on for more than a decade now, right? 20 years or so. But there are ways to get rid of credit card debt, and there are simple steps to follow. So this is where I explained how to build excellent financial discipline so you can actually save your hard-earned money, keep most of it for investments, and how to differentiate between tangible assets and fake assets. What assets will provide you cash flow, such cash flow that you won't depend on a job to live well. Okay, so this is where career and finances are different, because finances is about building the tangible assets, but career is about being useful to society and being marketable and keep learning marketable skills that keep you relevant and appreciated by those who might need you once you're solving. And then there is a chapter on relationships, extremely important aspects. So the five life aspects I am dealing with in my holistic self-confidence coaching approach is health, spirituality, career, finances, and relationships. Relationships, yes, they're last but not least, okay? Because who you listen to will impact your other choices in the other four life aspects poorly or greatly if you listen to the right people or the wrong people. So that's a big chapter on relationships and how to pick business partners, friends, and life partners. It's all experience based. Okay, so I've lived through all that, and the reason I wrote the book was not because of the coaching business, that came later, but people started asking me, who knew me, that I was very, very poorly doing emotionally and financially, and when I was younger. And then they saw everything that's happened later, and they say, how did you do that? We know how afraid you were, you know how obsessed you were with the violin and all that. How did this happen? And then I said, okay, so I basically used the same mental approach in all these five aspects. Let's put it into a book and tell everybody about it who cares to know. And that's where the book came.
It's again, it's amazing because you see, you cover so many different areas there. I mean, in this book, which obviously is all parts of your lives, but
Mm.
it's, it's just not like it's a physical, physical well-being and the mental and the spiritual and the financial. All aspects. And if I can see a common thread there, it's discipline. I think
Discipline.
discipline, I can see it in every aspect of your life, and long-term planning. Really hard work instead of looking for instant gratification.
Yeah, and it's funny when you get disciplined, luck works for you.
Yeah.
Just when you least expect. Things happen that, oh, I didn't have to work so hard for that, but that's not your starting point. Just like you're saying, the discipline and the trust in the process. And I learned this wonderful thing from Tony Robbins, whom I read way after I was successful. But he says how many people really overestimate what they can do in a year, and then they get disappointed because they didn't accomplish in 1 year what they thought they would, and they give up. But they really profoundly underestimate what can be accomplished within 10 to 15 years if you make the plan and you follow it. That really resonated with me, because I'm the type of person who builds upon experience, and I'm not afraid to say that I'm not the fastest grower as far as wealth and all that, but um, I've accomplished things that I never thought I could, and to the point that I can choose to work or not to work. And that's a big deal to me, because none of my parents were investors. They knew nothing financially. None of them was medical or anything. But connecting the dots between opportunities and various life aspects, I find this very important. And this is where the book is a very strong asset, I think, because the subtitle is a practical guide how you accomplish that, because you wonder where to start. Well, the thing is, you start from all these aspects because you don't want to neglect anyone for the sake of the other. You won't have a balanced, holistic um, existence as far as self-esteem and self-confidence. But when you start working on all these aspects, and I did that without thinking much about it, but that's how it evolved in my life, and it was highly beneficial because I never allowed myself to neglect my health for the sake of studying or for the sake of working. I was always, even when I was working night shifts for like a year, I always went to karate 3 times a week. I never stopped that because I knew it was necessary for my emotional and mind and physical health. So there are things you don't compromise. And that's how you learn to self-respect and say, okay, I will take care of everybody and everything else, but first of all, I need to take care of myself. And that's the health aspect. The financial aspect is I'm going to pay myself first, then I'm going to pay all the bills with integrity. Okay, I'm not going to procrastinate. Everything is going to be on time, but to pay yourself first, you need to understand the difference between wants and musts and prioritize your needs versus your wants if you want long-term success with tangible asset accumulation as opposed to fake asset accumulation, because people don't know the difference very often between fake and real assets. And that's a big reason they lose a lot of money and get very discouraged.
Yeah, absolutely. And you see, there's another word which comes to mind as well is foundations. You know, you in
Mhm.
every aspect of what you do, it's you build a very strong foundations, and people who see your success today, they might think, oh wow, some people might even say perhaps the person is lucky. You don't know what, but
Well, that's the prevailing mindset, of course. Of course.
sorry.
It's always the prevailing. They don't see the work underneath the.
But this is exactly that. They don't see all the work you've done. If you are there today, it's because of the sheer determination of always building and really making sure the base is full and don't taking shortcuts. But you know what?
Mhm.
This is like, as people say in Italian, chi va piano va sano, chi va sano va lontano, chi va
Sì,
lontano va
sì.
bene.
Certo, certo, sì, sì, sì.
You know this, huh? When you
I
go
know, yes.
slowly, you go safely. If you go safely, you go surely. If you go surely, you go well. I mean, I'm translated like kind of a,
That's right.
but and you see, there's another area, and I was not aware of this now, and you mentioned it's about relationships, that as well. This area, and for me, and the key word is communication. In Because very often, and afterwards I'll ask, of course, if you if it resonates what I'm saying, but
Of course, of
the
course.
more you first, I mean, in relationships, I mean, obviously, couples, etc. First is really to be as well, when we say communicate, it's to have the capacity to listen to the
Listen.
other person,
Mhm.
to forget about yourself, about what you think, about your ego, but just to try really to understand what the other person means.
That's
And
right.
and when we do that, and this could be, friends, could be business, could be, customers, when we really go from this point of view, this is when all of a sudden we start understanding, because whatever, each of us sees the words through their own lenses.
Mhm.
This is done, our education, our youth, etc. People say this is the truth. No, the truth, this is our truth. This is your truth. But this has origins. And when we are ready, really just to be to open up to others, this makes a big difference. How does this
Absolutely.
resonate with you?
Absolutely. Of course, because you need other people's cooperation to achieve what you want, because you can do a lot of things by yourself. I mean, many people make themselves more dependent on others, let's put it that way, okay? They don't rely on themselves as much as they should. I'm all about self-reliance. However, there are certain very important things that will lead you to more self-reliance if you are able to uh, convince others to cooperate with you. And that happens only through mutual understanding and good communication and your willingness to really hear them out first and see how you can be mutually helpful and mutually contributing to each other's quality of life. That has helped in my cases every time. And it's a very important aspect because your needs seem like they're the most important first, but the other person has similar and even greater needs sometimes. So in communication, and that was a big learning curve for me, I have to admit, because when I was a musician, there wasn't much communication going on. But as I entered the nursing field and then dealing with tenants and contractors and, the real estate field, it taught me a great deal of communication skills, which didn't again come overnight because I had my own communication problems and doubts and insecurities. So when you overcome those in yourself, though, you encourage others to express themselves more freely and more sincerely most of the time. And that helps in relationships and communications. But that is one of the most challenging life aspects because it's in many ways less in your control as the other aspects. Because you can be all disciplined all you want about your health, career, spirituality, and finances, but when you're dealing with other people, then you always sometimes rely on their discipline levels and their integrity, and that's how you intertwine these to match both needs and be mutually useful to each other, useful to each other, a mutual improvement in quality of life. That can be quite a steep road sometimes, but it's worth it because if it works out, then it's a win-win situation.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And you see, obviously, I'm a coach as well. I'm a mental fitness coach. And
Mhm.
you know what, the things I notice what people need most, and nearly all of us, is the ability to be able to speak up about anything, to become, to show vulnerably as we are, as our true selves, without fears of being
Right.
judged, of being criticized, of being given unsolicited advice. Already, when and very often we have things on our chest. We say, no, but we don't want to discuss it because if we know with this person they are going to advise, and we don't want that, or they are going to judge. So very often we keep things for ourselves. So my advice as well to anybody listening is that surround yourself, by people. Could be, I mean, sometimes it's friends, it's family, it's coaches, but really people with whom you won't have fear, to speak up. Because when you do that, when you feel heard, when you feel understood, when you feel seen, this is really when transformation can start.
That's true. That is completely true.
So, look, I want to thank you so much for this beautiful conversation. We went into different directions, but it's so varied that we could go on for, a long time, and perhaps we'll do another time. But is there a kind of last, advice or tip or anything you would like to share with our audience, Alexandra?
Yeah, embrace the fear and really understand what your fears are telling you. Because the way your anxiety, your feelings, your insecurities, they're telling you something valuable, and most of it is within your control. So I wanted to acknowledge how much you can control in your life and take the driver's seat of your life, so to speak. But that comes with the responsibility to understand your problems. And I don't want people to be reliant on others to tell them what their problems are because it's always twisted to somebody else's view. And most people know the answers to most of their questions and to their problems. And if you truly analyze the fear from a purely human perspective as to why your anxiety is telling you what it's telling you. That's where most of your answers are. Because I used to suffer from tremendous anxiety 24/7. I never took medications for it at all because I always believed I could handle it myself. It's just that I procrastinated for 20 years to actually handle it. But I never relied on pills or medications for anxiety. I eventually asked myself why I had allowed myself to become so anxious over things and what were the things I was supposed to do with my life that I wasn't doing. And that's where the transformation starts. So embrace your fear in a way that it teaches you what you can do right now to start that wonderful positive change of your life if you're craving such change. But don't run away forever because it's not going to go away. It chases, and don't push it away, acknowledge it, and then analyze what happened. Why all these years I'm feeling like that? And it's very helpful. You gotta sit with yourself and be very honest with yourself. And that is the most challenging part, to be honest with yourself. Okay. And if you feel that you are lying to yourself, deceiving yourself, and avoiding the elephant in the room, don't, because you think you have a lot of time, but you really don't have a lot of time. And the sooner you start that process, the sooner you'll see the wonderful results. And I really hope that that's inspiring, because it's really about inspiration and self-motivation that anybody has deep down there, but just needs to be awakened with a little, you know, thought process and self discipline. Back to that
You know what?
dreaded word, discipline.
I mean, you won't be surprised that it so much resonates with me because I have to say I use nearly the same words as you do, Alexandra, and when we talk about
Yeah.
fears as well, it's about facing them, embracing challenges as opportunities and learning from
Hmm.
that. And we know that actually what our what our biggest fears are, this is where when we overcoming, this is where we get the biggest transformation and
Hmm.
success. So it's really about
That's right.
talking with a positive mindset. How can I do this? What can I do? And as you know, really, thank you for using this expression. We are the drivers of our lives. It's up to us.
Hmm.
Let's not wait for other people to solve it or so to somebody to fulfill us in a relationship. Everything starts with us. And when we take care of
Exactly.
ourselves, when we elevate our, how do you say, uh, our vibrational frequencies, when we become the best person we can, this is how we can help others doing the same.
Yes. Yes, because you emanate that confidence, and there is no question that you're confident in a comfortable in a way of confidence, yet highly aware and alert and vigilant every step of the way. But that's a very different type of alertness than the debilitating anxiety that people feel unfulfilled, and because they constantly feel judged or mainly by themselves. The self-judgment is the hardest thing to overcome, and we project it onto others thinking that they're judging us, but actually it's really all starts with us and why we are anxious, afraid, hating things, angry, and it really is from within. A lot of unfulfilled desires, dreams, aspirations, and fear and blame and anger. If you get control over that and your situation, they'll gradually dissipate from your life. So there is no time to wait, because why deprive yourself of quality of life any further than you absolutely should? You should never have. And when you get to a point where you build your confidence, you accomplish at least like 50 out of 100 goals, and you see how well it works for you, you will realize that that whole emotional trauma was unnecessary in the first place, and it was mostly self-inflicted. But it is what it is. We fail, we learn from our mistakes. And failures are the best way to learn. And people are afraid to fail. And that's where we get stuck in life. Because if you don't, the only people who don't fail are those who don't do anything. All right. So if you failed, that means you did something with yourself, with your life. You tried something, get up, try again, fail again, get up again.
Exactly.
And the
Exactly.
more you get up, the more
And,
faced you're not faced by failures anymore. And eventually the accomplishment happens one after the other.
well, thank you so much. We'll finish on this beautiful note. And when people want to contact you, Alexandra, what's the easiest?
So the best way is through my website. It is holisticselfconfidence.com. And I apologize for the airplanes today, Daniel, but we have a military base 12 miles from here, so they fly above the house. If
I,
you're
I
hearing
I
this
didn't
noise,
hear
that's
them,
what it.
so
Oh, you're so lucky. So you're fortunate. But holisticselfconfidence.com, no dashes, okay? The book, the paperback is available only in the US through the website, and the ebook is available through the website worldwide. Also on
okay.
Amazon, Smashwords, Apple Books, and Barnes& and Noble. And the book is called It Really Is Simple, A Holistic Approach to Self-Confidence, a Practical Guide.
Well, you see, thank you so much. After all was we've discussed, everybody should read this book because there's so much, and this is, my podcast, it's all about transformation, and you are the living example, Alexandra. Thank you again for your time. It was such a pleasure to have you as a host
Likewise,
today.
Daniel. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Thank you.